The year is 1883. My journey to Auroreal, Colorado, constitutes a steady, inexorable ascension into what could only be described as a form of purgatory. The locomotive chugs relentlessly upward, its great iron wheels screaming their protestation against the tracks during the arduous climb. Through the grimy window pane, the landscape undergoes a profound transformation, shifting from placid, rolling foothills into jagged, menacing granite teeth that seem to tear aggressively at a bruised purple twilight sky. The colossal mountains close in, systematically swallowing the remaining light, promising profound isolation and closely guarded secrets. I am a man of Denver, a man accustomed to paved streets and the predictable glow of gaslight. This oppressive, untamed wilderness feels entirely like a foreign planet. My name is Miles Blackwood, an inspector dispatched from the city to investigate a matter too bizarre, too profoundly unsettling for the local authorities to contemplate handling alone. The official telegram was conspicuously sparse on substantive details, speaking only of a mass disappearance which had occurred at a remote mountain orphanage. It is a chilling phrase that sits uncomfortably, like a stone in the pit of the stomach, refusing to be digested by logic. When I finally disembark at the small, windswept depot, the silence is the first truly palpable thing I experience. It is not the gentle, comforting quiet of a peaceful, slumbering town, but the profound, hollow, and absolute silence of a vacuum, a desolate space where all sound seemingly goes to die. It presses physically against my eardrums, a dead, oppressive weight where the familiar, chaotic hum of life ought to be. My professional purpose is to unravel the tangled knots of human failing, common theft, elaborate fraud, and the grim, irreversible finality of murder. I consistently deal in demonstrable facts. I work with evidence that you can physically hold, touch, and measure. However, as I stand motionless upon this desolate platform, the cold, biting wind whipping viciously at my long coat, I feel the deeply unsettling premonition that concrete facts will be in conspicuously short supply here. The orphanage itself stands upon a great bluff overlooking the huddled town below, a stark Gothic silhouette against the last vestiges of the dying sun. Veiled Grace's Orphanage. Even the very name is a sibilant whisper, a breath of disquiet on the thin mountain air. Sheriff Gable, a man whose weary face is a veritable roadmap of worry, and whose broad shoulders slump with the palpable weight of this unfolding tragedy, drives me up the winding, treacherous dirt road. He handles the leather reins of his buggy with a grim, weary resignation. His words are few and far between, as if he fears speaking the events aloud will grant them more power. "Never seen nothing like it in all my years, Inspector," he mutters. The fifth time he's articulated the same sentiment, his voice rough with disbelief. It's almost like they just flew away. When we finally arrive at the imposing structure, I see precisely what he means. The disquieting silence I had palpably felt in the town is amplified here 100-fold, becoming an active, malevolent presence. I stand now in the cavernous main dormitory of the institution. My boots echo unnervingly on the wide, planked wooden floors, each footstep producing a sound that feels like a form of sacrilege in this hallowed, empty space. Rows of small, identical iron-framed beds stretch out before me in perfect military lines. 53 of them. Each one is neatly made. The thin white sheets are turned down with care, the single thin wool blanket folded precisely at the foot. Few of the pillows retain the faint impression of a small head, a ghostly, shallow indentation in the worn, laundered fabric. It is as if the children themselves, the very substance and essence of them, simply and cleanly evaporated into the thin, frigid mountain air somewhere between the evening's last whispered prayer and the morning's first hesitant light. The number itself, 53, feels like a logical fallacy. It is a cruel, impossible joke whispered by a madman. I walk the long, lonely aisle between the two rows of empty beds, the sheer overwhelming scale of the collective absence pressing in on me from all sides. The air is cold, but it is a peculiar, penetrating kind of cold. It is not the simple, honest chill of an autumn night in the Rocky Mountains. Instead, it is a deep, permeating cold that seems to emanate directly from the very walls of the building itself, a damp, subterranean, cellar-like chill that has absolutely nothing to do with ambient temperature. This pervasive cold has everything to do with a profound and ancient soul-deep dread. Sheriff Gable, a large man, lingers hesitantly by the dormitory doorway, his considerable frame seeming to shrink within the oppressive atmosphere. He steadfastly refuses to step further inside the room. His knuckles are stark white where he grips the brim of his dusty hat. "We have checked the grounds thoroughly, Inspector," he says, his voice a low, rumbling thunder that does little to disturb the profound and oppressive quiet. "Every single inch has been examined. The surrounding woods for a mile around. The old, treacherous mine shafts that dangerously pockmark the entire North Ridge. We have not found a single footprint. Not one broken twig. The main gate was discovered barred securely from the inside. Every window, every single door was latched tight." He pauses, swallowing hard. It's just impossible, that's what it is." I continue my slow, methodical patrol of the room, my gloved hand brushing lightly against a cold, black iron post. On a small, simple nightstand beside one of the beds sits a worn wooden toy soldier. Its crudely painted-on smile provides a grotesque, jarring counterpoint to the somber, grief-stricken scene. I pick the small object up. It's carved without much skill, evidently, but it was clearly loved. The cheap paint is worn smooth in particular places from the constant, loving clutch of a small hand. I try to imagine that hand, and the small child to whom it belonged, but the image immediately dissolves into the terrifying, overwhelming emptiness of the room. I set the small figure down gently upon the nightstand, feeling like an unwelcome intruder who has stumbled upon a private wake. I move methodically through the rest of the building, each new room a new, silent chapter in this unfolding book of emptiness. The refectory, with its long, scarred wooden tables and benches, is unnervingly, unnaturally tidy. The large kitchen is absolutely spotless. The faint, lingering scent of industrial lye and boiled cabbage hangs almost imperceptibly in the air. In a small classroom, chalk-written lessons remain pristine upon the blackboard. A neatly printed list of state capitals, some multiplication tables, a line of practiced cursive. The sentence reads, "The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog." The elegant looping words seem to hang suspended in the still air, a ghostly, heartbreaking echo of a normal day that began like any other and ended in a completely inexplicable, terrifying enigma. The official matron of the orphanage, a woman named Mrs. Gable, the sheriff's own sister, I learn, is currently under heavy sedation at the town doctor's office. Her harrowing discovery of the 53 empty beds this morning had immediately sent her into a fit of violent, shrieking hysterics. She has not yet recovered from the shock. Her young assistant, a pale, timid girl named Clara, whose eyes are wide with residual shock, could only repeat the same strange phrase over and over again like a prayer. The bell never rang. The morning bell never rang. It had been Clara's solemn duty to ring the 6 o'clock bell for morning prayers. She claims tearfully that she overslept. Something she swears on a stack of holy Bibles has never once happened before in her 5 years of service. She awoke suddenly at 7 o'clock, she said. She was filled with a sudden, inexplicable terror, a cold, creeping dread that made her run from her small attic room down to the main dormitory, only to discover this perfectly preserved, silent tomb. My systematic search eventually leads my steps to the headmistress's private office. The door is slightly ajar, a dark, vertical slash of shadow in the long, dim hallway. Inside, the same unnatural, disturbing tidiness prevails. A heavy glass inkwell is full to the brim, a clean pen resting neatly beside it on a green blotter. A financial ledger is open on the desk. Its pages are filled with neat, meticulous cursive script detailing recent pantry supplies. Flour, 50 lbs. Sugar, 20 lbs. Lard, 10 tins. The sheer boring mundanity of it all is jarring and deeply unsettling. And then, my tired eyes finally see it. On the polished, reflective surface of the mahogany desk, placed dead center with obvious intention, is a single folded piece of aged parchment. It's clearly not the standard orphanage stationery. This paper is older, the color of aged bone, the sharp edges yellowed and brittle with time. For a fleeting, desperate moment, my logical mind kicks in, grasping at straws. A transfer. A sudden, unannounced evacuation due to an outbreak of cholera or perhaps scarlet fever. A simple note left in haste to explain the sudden departure. I feel a small, ridiculous surge of hope. A rational explanation would be a lifeline in this deep ocean of the impossible. I reach for the document, my fingers tracing the sharp, deliberate crease. The paper is strangely cold, almost damp to the touch, as if it has somehow absorbed the profound chill of the room. I carefully unfold the brittle parchment. The fragile hope I had nurtured dies instantly in my throat, brutally strangled by what I see. The sheet isn't filled with frantic explanations or hasty apologies. It contains just a single solitary word, written in an elegant, almost archaic script. The ink is a deep rusty brown, precisely the color of old dried blood. The word is called. "What is it then?" Sheriff Gable asks from the doorway, his voice tight with a tension he can no longer successfully conceal from me. I stare intently at the word. The elaborate loops and arcane swirls of the calligraphy seem to squirm before my very eyes like living, malevolent things. "I do not know," I whisper, the small sound immediately swallowed by the suffocating, watchful silence of the room. I truly do not know. I spend the remainder of that long day engaged in a futile, frustrating search for additional clues. The very fabric of the place seems to actively resist my inquiry. The old floorboards refuse to hold scuff marks. The dusty windowsills are free of any fingerprints. The disappearance was an act of immaculate subtraction. My mind, a tool I have always sharpened on the whetstone of logic and pure reason, cycles endlessly through a list of logical impossibilities. A mass kidnapping? There was no forced entry, and no ransom note has appeared. A strange mass hysteria? It is highly unlikely to lead to such a synchronized, traceless, and silent vanishing. I am a man standing perilously on the edge of a great cliff, and the very ground of reason is crumbling away swiftly beneath my feet, revealing a dark, yawning, and terrifying abyss. As dusk begins to settle, casting long skeletal shadows across the grounds that make the orphanage look like a great slumbering beast, I find myself drawn back to the records room. It's a small, exceedingly dusty annex located off the main hall, filled with tall, black metal filing cabinets. There are also stacks of old ledgers bound in cracking, disintegrating leather. The smell of decaying paper and of time itself is thick in the air, a dry, tickling scent that catches unpleasantly in the back of my throat. I am looking for anything at all to give me some purchase. A history of strange occurrences, a disgruntled former employee, a wealthy benefactor with a dark and hidden past. I pull out a heavy admission ledger from the year 1880, its fragile spine held together by strips of yellowing tape. I light my lantern, its golden glow pushing back the encroaching shadows. I run my gloved finger down the long list of names, each one a small ghost to me now. Thomas Purley, age 7, Sarah Goodwell, age 9, little Eli Vance, age 5, who was admitted just 6 months ago. 53 individual names. I count them all one by one, my throat tightening. The list was updated just last week, I note, with the arrival of a new girl, Lily Patterson. I am about to close the heavy book, convinced that this is yet another dead end in a growing labyrinth of them, when my eyes happen to catch something at the bottom of the last page. It is written in a different handwriting. The ink is fainter, almost faded to complete invisibility. It's a list of names under a previous, older heading, dated 30 long years prior. Transfers, March 1853. It is a list of children who had been transferred to an institution in the East. It's a very short list, containing only a handful of names. But the final name on that list makes the very air freeze solid in my lungs. The heavy ledger slips from my numb fingers and crashes loudly to the floor, the sound like a cannon shot in the oppressive stillness. It sends a thick plume of gray dust into the air like a startled fleeing spirit. The name written there is Beatriz Almeida. No, that cannot possibly be right. My exhausted mind must be playing cruel tricks on me, a hallucination born of profound exhaustion and creeping dread. I snatch the heavy book up from the floorboards, my heart hammering violently against my ribs like a trapped, frantic bird. I stare down at the faded name, but it does not change. Beatriz. My Beatriz. My family name is Blackwood now. We changed it when we moved to Denver 10 years ago. We had wanted to shed the old skin of a past that was filled with abject poverty and the ever-present, hovering specter of grief. But before that, in the squalid, forgotten tenements of the city's industrial fringes, we were the Almeidas, and Beatrice was my dear sister. She did not die of a raging fever 30 years ago, as my grieving parents had told me with streaming tears in their eyes. She was not buried in a small, unmarked grave in a desolate pauper's field. They sent her away to this place, to Auroreal, and her name is here in a book of ghosts. It is a chilling prelude to a larger, more terrible vanishing. The profound cold I had felt earlier, it is now deep inside me, a sharp shard of solid ice lodged in the very center of my soul. This is no longer just another case. It has never been just a case. This is a personal reckoning, and it has been waiting patiently for me for 30 long years. The deep shadows in the room seem to deepen further, to coalesce, to take on a waiting, watchful quality. The oppressive silence outside is no longer empty. It is listening intently. I look back at the single, damning word, the word on the parchment that is still in my coat pocket. Called. My sister was here, she was called. And now, 53 more innocent children are gone. The question is no longer just what happened to them. The question is what in God's name happened to her. The following 3 days are a frustrating blur of systematic, yet entirely fruitless investigation that feels much more like a ritual of denial than a professional inquiry. With a summoned team of deputies from the next county, we meticulously scour every single inch of Auroreal. We drag the icy, startlingly clear waters of the nearby Crystal Creek. We send brave, perhaps foolish men into the treacherous, long-abandoned silver mines that honeycomb the mountainside, their bright lanterns like lonely, fading stars being swallowed whole by an infinite, waiting dark. We find absolutely nothing, not a single scuff mark, not a torn piece of plain cloth, not even one single child's shoe. It is as if the earth itself, the very rock and soil of this strange place, had opened up its maw and consumed them all whole, leaving no trace behind. Auroreal is a town that is palpably built on secrets. I can feel it in the furtive way the townsfolk watch me from behind their delicate lace curtains as I pass. I see it in the way they all fall silent whenever I enter the well-stocked general store. The town was founded 50-odd years ago. It was during the Great Silver Boom, a frantic, desperate, and dangerous place that clawed its considerable wealth directly from the unforgiving rock of the mountain. But when the rich silver veins eventually ran dry, as they always inevitably do, Auroreal somehow did not die. It did not become a ghost town like the dozens of others that now litter these imposing mountains. It survived. It even prospered, in a quiet, strangely subdued way. The houses are all meticulously well-maintained, their paint always fresh. The general store is always fully stocked. There's a strange, placid contentment visible on the faces of the older residents, a contentment that now looks to my suspicious eyes like a carefully constructed, fragile mask. They are all conspicuously unwilling to talk about the orphanage. When I press them for information, their eyes shift away. Their mouths all tighten into thin, hard, and uncooperative lines. They offer me empty condolences and meaningless platitudes, but underneath it all, there is a palpable current of fear so potent that I can almost smell it on the air, like the scent of ozone just before a violent lightning strike. It's the deep, instinctual fear of a long-dormant beast that has been suddenly and violently roused from its deep slumber. I make an attempt to question Mrs. Gable again. She's a hollow shell of a woman now. Her face is pale and drawn as a marble death mask, her hands trembling ceaselessly. She twists a lace handkerchief into a mangled, unrecognizable knot. She sits silently by the window in her brother's cramped parlor, staring out at the jagged, imposing peaks of the mountains, as if they were the cold iron bars of her own personal cell. "They were such good children," she murmurs, her voice thin and reedy, a mere ghost of its former robust self. "They said their prayers every single night. They were all such good, obedient children." "Mrs. Gable," I say, consciously keeping my voice gentle but firm, the way one speaks to a frightened, unpredictable horse. "I need to know about the history of this particular place. Any strange occurrences? Any local legends? Anything at all, no matter how insignificant or foolish it might seem to you." Her eyes, which were dull with grief and laudanum, they flicker with something else for a brief moment, something sharp and deeply terrified. "We do not speak of such things here," she says, her voice dropping to a harsh, conspiratorial whisper that makes my skin crawl. "It is a place of God. It is a place of sanctuary. A sanctuary where 53 children have vanished into thin air. I counter, my carefully cultivated patience now wearing dangerously thin. I have found a record, Mrs. Gable, from the year 1853. A list of children who were transferred. A girl named Beatriz Almeida was on that list. At the mere mention of the name, a violent, uncontrollable spasm of terror crosses her pale face. She makes a small, reflexive warding gesture with her trembling hand, a strange folk sign to ward off evil that I had only ever seen among the most superstitious immigrants in the city. The veiled lady protects her own, she whispers, her eyes wide and unfocused now, looking at something just over my shoulder. She gives, and she takes. It is the way of things in this town. It is the price for our continued peace. The veiled lady? I press, leaning forward. My heart quickens its beat. Who is the veiled lady? But she is gone from me. Her mind has retreated back into its protective, impenetrable shell of madness. She begins to hum a strange tune, a tuneless, discordant, and deeply unsettling melody that makes the hairs on my arms stand on end. Sheriff Gable enters the room then, his face a grim mask, and places a heavy, warning hand on my shoulder. That's enough for today, Inspector. You're upsetting her further. His tone is completely final. The door to that particular line of inquiry is closed, barred, and securely locked. The veiled lady. She gives and she takes. The strange words echo and reverberate in my mind. It's not the name of a person. It's the name of a legend. A very real and apparently very feared local legend. That night, sleep offers me no escape from this place. My dreams are a feverish, sweat-soaked torment, taking me back to a childhood that I had long since buried under countless years of logic and driving ambition. I am a young boy of 7 again, living in a cramped, dusty tenement in a forgotten, squalid corner of Denver. My little sister, Beatriz, is 5. She is a mere wisp of a girl, with wide, dark, solemn eyes that seem to see things that others didn't, the distinct shapes of faces in the ugly water stains on the ceiling, the sound of whispers of the wind in the chimney. I remember the fever. I remember her small body, hot to the touch, her breaths coming in shallow, painful and rasping gasps. I remember my parents, their faces etched with a grief so profound that it seemed to suck the very air from the cramped room. They told me that she had passed away peacefully. They told me God, in his infinite and mysterious wisdom, had taken her from us to be an angel. But now my dreams, colored by the insidious poison of this place, rewrite that painful memory. I see my father, his shoulders slumped not in grief but in deep shame. He is leading Beatrice away down a long, dusty road toward a waiting, unmarked carriage. She does not look back. I see my mother, her face streaked with bitter tears, clutching a small, worn purse that held a meager handful of silver dollars. The price for peace, the price for our passage out of our own personal hell of unending poverty. They didn't lose her to a fever. They sold her. They gave her away to this terrible place, to Auroreal, and then they lied to me for my entire life. The grief I have carried for my lost sister for 30 long years curdles. It transforms into a hot, bitter rage that burns like a coal in my chest. I wake up in a cold sweat in my small room at the town's only boarding house, the phantom humming of Mrs. Gable still a faint, disturbing echo in my ears. I decide I must take a different approach. If the living will not speak the truth, perhaps the dead will. I return to the orphanage's records room, this time with a larger, brighter lantern, and a resolve that has been hardened into cold steel by my newfound, righteous anger. I'm not just looking for clues anymore. I am looking for the truth of my own life, a life that I have now discovered is built upon a foundation of cruel and heartbreaking lies. For hours that stretch into the deepest, darkest part of the night, I pore over the brittle, fragile pages of old ledgers, account books, and personal letters. I slowly piece together the history of the Veiled Graces Orphanage. It was founded in the year 1848 by a reclusive and mysterious woman named Elara Veil. The town records about her are suspiciously sparse. She was a wealthy widow from the East, they said, who arrived in Auroreal. She came with a considerable fortune of completely mysterious origin. She was a total recluse, rarely ever seen in the town, but her charity was the stuff of local legend. She funded the construction of the new town hall, the church, and the orphanage itself. She was the town's silent, unseen benefactor. Her only explicit condition for her considerable largesse was that the orphanage be built on the isolated plot of land on the bluff, and that she alone would oversee its day-to-day operations, with absolutely no interference from the elected town council. I find a faded photograph of her, a daguerreotype that was tucked inside a heavy, leather-bound copy of Milton's Paradise Lost. She is a tall, severe-looking woman, dressed in dark, heavy fabrics that seem to completely absorb the light around her. Her face is sharp and obviously intelligent, but her eyes are deeply unsettling. They seem to hold a profound, ancient sadness, a soul-deep weariness that seems to transcend a single human lifetime, and she is wearing a thick, dark veil of what looks like Spanish lace that completely obscures the lower half of her face. It was a fashion that was already decades out of style even then. The Veiled Lady. The name is no longer just a legend to me. It now has a face. Then, hidden in a false-bottomed trunk under a pile of moth-eaten linens, I find her private diaries. They were tucked away as if she had expected them to be found one day. The diaries are bound in black, unadorned leather, the pages within filled with the same elegant, rust-colored ink as the single word on the note from the desk. The early entries are normal enough. They detail the many struggles of establishing a new life in a harsh, unforgiving, and primitive land. But then, as the years pass by, the tone of her writing begins to change, to darken, to become something else entirely. October 17th, 1850. The pact is now sealed. I have spoken the ancient words into the very heart of the mountain, and it has answered me. The town will have its prosperity. The earth has given its first promise of silver. In return, it demands its tribute, a small price to pay for peace, a small price to be free of the hunger. My blood runs cold in my veins. A pact? A tribute? This is the language of madness, of dark, half-forgotten folklore from the old world. But the great silver boom of Auroreal, the town's inexplicable, logic-defying survival, did happen, right after this date. It happened against all geological odds. I read on, my hands trembling so badly that I can barely hold the heavy book steady in the flickering lantern light. Elara, the Veiled Lady, was not just a benefactor. She was a practitioner of some dark, ancient, and forgotten art. She had made a deal with something, an entity she refers to only as the Warden of the Mountain, an ancient slumbering consciousness that slept deep within the rock and fed on life, on innocence. March 12th, 1853. The first tribute is now due. The Warden is restless. The whispers have begun in the deep places. I can feel its hunger as if it were my own. I have chosen 7. They are the brightest, the purest of the flock. It is a mercy, I tell myself repeatedly. The life I offer them in the Warden's eternal care is an endless dream, a paradise crafted from their own hopes. It is a place free from the hardships and sorrows of this cruel world. It is a kindness. I must continue to believe that it is a kindness. 7 children. The exact same number as the transfer list from the year 1853. My sister Beatrice was one of them. She wasn't transferred. She was sacrificed. I feel a great wave of nausea so strong that I have to grip the edge of the heavy wooden table to keep from falling to the floor. The diaries go on to describe a ritual, a specific haunting lullaby that opens a gateway between worlds, a sacrament that puts the chosen children into an eternal slumber, before their life essence is gathered by the Warden. It's a recurring cycle, a terrible debt that must be paid to keep the entity dormant and the town prosperous. Then I find what I was unknowingly searching for all along, a later entry, from many years later, written in a shakier, more desperate hand. September 3rd, 1878. The whispers are wrong. I saw one of them today, in the waking world. A flicker in the corner of my eye, a ghost in the machine. The pact is weakening. The dream is fraying at the edges. There is a way to break it, a counter-ritual I have pieced together, from forbidden texts. It requires a catalyst, an object of deep personal significance from one of the called, and the will of a blood relative to perform it. But to break the pact is to awaken the Warden from its slumber. To save the few is to condemn the many to its waking wrath. I have hidden the details of the ritual within these pages. May God, if he still listens to one such as I, forgive me for what I have done. A way to save them. The hope is a blinding, painful light in the darkness of my despair, but it's immediately extinguished by the cruel reality of the task. An object belonging to one of the called? To Beatrice? My parents gave away every scrap of her existence, trying to erase the memory of their shame. I have absolutely nothing. It's a dead end. A cruel, taunting joke written in a madwoman's diary. I slam the book shut. The sound is like a gunshot in the silent room. As if in response, a sudden gust of wind rattles the window pane, and with it comes a sound. Faint, so faint I think I'm imagining it. A trick of the wind whistling through a crack in the frame. A melody. A simple, lilting tune. A lullaby. It's coming from the dormitory. My heart seizes in my chest, a painful, stuttering thing. I grab my lantern and my revolver, my mind a whirlwind of terror and disbelief. The logical part of my brain, the inspector, is screaming that it's just the wind, a trick of the acoustics in this old, decaying building. But the part of me that read the diary, the part of me that is Beatrice's brother, knows better. I walk slowly, deliberately out of the records room and into the main hall. The humming is louder here. It's a female voice, soft and ethereal, yet filled with an unbearable, chilling sadness. It weaves through the air, a silken thread of sound pulling me forward, a siren's song in a house of ghosts. I enter the dormitory. The room is bathed in the pale, sterile light of the moon pouring through the tall, arched windows. And the room is no longer empty. In the center of the aisle, standing with her back to me, is the translucent, shimmering figure of a young girl. She is humming the lullaby, her small shoulders shaking with the effort. The air around her is freezing cold, a visible mist curling in the moonlight. My breath catches in my throat. I can't see her face, but I know. With a certainty that defies all reason, I know who it is. Beatrice? I whisper, the name a ragged, painful prayer torn from my soul. The humming stops. The figure turns slowly, so slowly, the movement agonizingly protracted. My lantern light flickers, threatening to die, casting dancing, distorted shadows on the walls. Her face is pale and indistinct, her features blurred like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. But her eyes are wide and dark and filled with a silent, pleading terror that pierces me to the core. She raises a trembling, translucent hand and points, not at me, but at the wall behind the headmistress's old, dismantled bed frame. Then, another sound joins the silence. A whisper. It's not from the girl. It's from all around me, seeming to emanate from the very walls, the floor, the empty beds. A chorus of faint, childish whispers. He knows. He knows. He read the book. The whispers are not angry. They are afraid, their tones thin and stretched with terror. And then, a new voice, older, stronger, colder. It cuts through the childish whispers like a shard of ice, a voice of command and ancient power. The blood of the covenant is here. The figure of my sister flickers and dissolves into nothingness, like smoke on the wind. The lullaby is gone. The whispers cease. I am alone again in the vast, silent room, the silence now more profound, more terrible than before. My whole body is shaking with a violent, uncontrollable tremor. I look at the wall where she pointed. It looks solid, covered in the same peeling, water-stained wallpaper as the rest of the room. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. The next day, I return with a crowbar and a new, terrible certainty. Sheriff Gable, his face a mask of grim disbelief and concern for my sanity, stands behind me. Blackwood, this is insane. You're chasing shadows in your own mind. Humor me, Sheriff, I say, my voice hoarse. I walk to the wall and tap it with the head of the crowbar. It sounds solid, but near the floor, behind where the bed would have been, I hear a slight, almost imperceptible hollow echo. I jam the tip of the crowbar into the seam where the wall meets the floor and pull with all my strength. The wood groans in protest. With a final splintering crack, a section of the wall gives way, revealing a dark, gaping hole and a set of narrow stone steps leading down into a blackness that seems to drink the light. A hidden cellar. As I stare down into that oppressive, waiting dark, I realize the truth. Elara Veil's diaries, the whispers, the ghost of my sister, they aren't haunting me. They are guiding me. This isn't just a mystery to be solved. It's a path I am meant to walk. A path that leads down into the heart of the mountain's darkness. And I know with a certainty that chills me to the very marrow of my bones, that the veiled lady is waiting for me at the bottom. The air that rises from the hidden cellar is ancient and cold, carrying a loamy, subterranean scent of damp earth, stone, and something else, something faintly metallic and sickly sweet, like old blood. Sheriff Gable recoils, his hand instinctively going to the pistol at his hip, his face draining of all color. God Almighty, he breathes, his voice a strangled whisper. This has been here the whole time. She didn't want anyone to find it, I say, my own voice sounding distant to my ears, as if it belongs to another man. I hold my lantern over the opening. The stone steps are slick with a black weeping moisture, disappearing into a darkness so complete it feels like a solid thing. My logical mind, the inspector, the man of facts and reason, is screaming at me to wait for backup, for more men, for the sanity of daylight. But the brother, the man who saw his sister's pleading ghost, knows there is no waiting. The lullaby has been sung. The gateway is open. Stay here, Sheriff, I command, my voice steadier than I feel, a false bravado for his sake or my own. I cannot tell. Bar the main door. Let no one in or out until I return. Blackwood, don't be a damn fool. You can't go down there alone. I'm not alone, I say, looking at the empty space where Beatrice's spirit stood just hours before. I haven't been for a while. Before he can argue further, I swing my legs over the precipice and plant my feet on the first step. The stone is freezing cold, a deathly chill. It seeps through the thick leather of my boots. I begin my descent. The lantern light casts a small, trembling circle of gold, pushing back a darkness that feels infinite and alive. The stone walls are rough-hewn, carved directly from the mountain's living rock. They weep that same black, viscous moisture that glistens like oil in the light. The only sounds are the drip, drip, drip of water and my own ragged breathing. The steps seem to go on forever, a spiral staircase into the bowels of the earth. With each one, the air grows colder, heavier, pressing in on me. The silence is different here. It's not the empty silence of the orphanage above, but a full, waiting silence. The silence of a predator in its lair. I can feel it on my skin, a prickling static charge that makes the fine hairs on my arms and the back of my neck stand on end. My own breathing is thunderous in my ears. My heartbeat a frantic, panicked drum against my ribs. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, my foot touches a level floor. I've reached the bottom. I hold the lantern high, its light stretching and failing against the immense cavernous space. I'm in a vast, circular chamber. It looks like a natural cavern, but the floor has been smoothed and laid with dark slate tiles that are unnervingly cold underfoot. In the center of the chamber stands a single, massive pillar of black, unidentifiable rock, reaching from the floor to the unseen, dripping ceiling, like the gnarled, arthritic finger of a buried god. And scattered around the chamber, arranged in a perfect, silent circle, are 53 small stone cots. On each cot lies the sleeping form of a child. My breath hitches, a painful, tearing sound in my throat. I move closer to one of the cots, my legs unsteady. It's little Eli Vance, the 5-year-old. His face is peaceful, his chest rising and falling in a slow, even rhythm. He is not dead. He is dreaming. They are all dreaming. Their faces are serene, some even have faint angelic smiles, as if lost in some wonderful private paradise. But it is a paradise in the heart of a tomb. The air shimmers faintly around them, a visible, heatless aura of energy, a pale, ethereal light being drawn from their sleeping forms towards the great central pillar. A beautiful yet terrible sight, is it not, Inspector? The voice comes from the shadows behind the pillar. It is the voice from my nightmares. The cold, clear, cultured voice of the veiled lady. It is calm, reasonable, and utterly devoid of human warmth. I raise my revolver, its familiar weight a pathetic and useless comfort. Show yourself, I command, my voice cracking on the words. A figure steps out from behind the pillar into the trembling light of my lantern. It is her, Elara Veil. She looks exactly as she did in the faded daguerreotype, tall and imperious, dressed in the same dark, heavy gown that seems to drink the light. Her face is still partially obscured by the thick black veil. She does not look like a ghost. She looks solid, real, and terrifyingly, unnaturally ageless. You have my diaries, I see, she says, her head tilting slightly, a gesture of mild curiosity. You have learned some of my secrets, but you cannot possibly understand the weight of them. I understand you made a pact with darkness. I spit. the words tasting like acid in my mouth. I understand you've been feeding innocent children to a monster to preserve your own unnatural life and this town's petty prosperity. A sound that might be a dry, humorless chuckle comes from behind the veil. Prosperity is never petty, Inspector, and I am not the monster. I am the zookeeper. The warden of the mountain slumbers, and in its dreams it does not hunger. It is my charge, my burden to keep it dreaming. These children, they are the substance of that dream. Their life force fuels an eternity of joy, a heaven crafted from their own purest memories and hopes. Is that not a kinder fate than the squalor, the hunger, the misery that awaited most of them in your world? It's a lie, a gilded cage. I snarl, my finger tightening on the trigger, the hammer clicking back with a sound of terrible finality. Where is my sister? Where is Beatrice? Ah, yes, the catalyst. The blood of the covenant, Elara says, her voice softening with something that might be synthetic pity, a well-rehearsed sympathy. Beatrice was different, special. She was strong, even as a child. When her time came to join the dream, she resisted. Her will was too powerful. She fractured the connection. For 30 years, she has existed as an echo, a ghost in the machine, unable to fully join the dream, yet unable to leave or wake. She is the flaw in my perfect creation. She gestures with a delicate, pale hand to the far side of the chamber, where a single stone cot sits apart from the others, shrouded in deeper shadow. She is there, waiting for you. I move towards it as if in a trance, my legs heavy, my heart a painful, suffocating knot in my chest. Lying on the cot is a young woman. Her face is pale but peaceful. It is Beatrice, but not the little girl from my fractured memories. She is aged as she would be now, a woman I never knew, asleep, waiting. The counter-ritual you read about, Elara continues, her voice a silken, persuasive trap. It is real, but you misunderstand its purpose. It does not free them. It does not break the pact. It merely transfers the burden. The warden requires a zookeeper, inspector, a new one. You, a blood relative of a flawed sacrifice, can become the new anchor for the dream. You could take my place. You could reshape it, strengthen it. You could be with your sister, truly with her, forever. All I ask for in return is my freedom, my long overdue rest. She holds out that delicate, pale hand. Give me the diary. It contains the words of binding that will allow the transfer. Give it to me, and all this can be yours. An eternity of peace, a paradise with the sister you lost. The air in the cavern crackles with a palpable power. I can feel it, the seductive promise of it, the chance to undo the sins of my parents, to be with Beatrice, to finally bring her peace, even in a lie. My arm trembles, the revolver feeling impossibly heavy. The world narrows to this single terrible choice. The 53 sleeping children, my lost sister, an eternity of quiet, placid dreams, or the harsh, broken, real world above. I look at Beatrice's sleeping face. I see the little girl with the wide, dark eyes who saw faces in the water stains, and I remember the worn toy soldier by the bed upstairs. I remember the lessons on the chalkboard. I remember their lives, real lives, full of pain and joy and struggle, not this pale, parasitic imitation. My resolve hardens into a cold, diamond-hard point. No, I say, the word a stone dropping into a silent pool, the ripples traveling out into the vast, waiting darkness. Elara's hand drops. The temperature in the cavern plummets. A foolish, sentimental choice, Inspector. They deserve a life, I say, my voice ringing with a conviction I didn't know I possessed. Not a dream. And you deserve to be forgotten. Before she can react, I do the one thing she did not anticipate. I pull the diary from my coat, but instead of giving it to her, I open my lantern's glass casing and thrust the book's brittle pages into the open flame. The dry, ancient paper catches instantly, erupting in a whoosh of bright orange fire. The rust-colored ink sizzles and turns black, the words of power curling into ash. A sound of pure, inhuman rage tears from behind the veil. It is a shriek that is not a sound but a physical force, a psychic wave of malice that slams into me, throwing me back against the stone floor. The lantern skitters away, its light extinguished. My revolver flies from my hand, clattering somewhere in the darkness. Darkness, absolute suffocating darkness. But the burning diary provides a flickering hellish light. In its dying, dancing glow, I see Elara's form convulsing, her hands clawing at her veil as if it were on fire. "You fool! What have you done?" she shrieks, her voice losing its cultured calm and becoming something jagged, ancient, and monstrous. The pages burn, turning to black, fluttering ash. I didn't burn the entire book. In a moment of desperate clarity, I had only thrust the middle section into the flames, the pages containing the rituals, both the one to bind and the one to break. I have destroyed the instruction manual. The chamber begins to tremble violently. A low, grinding sound comes from the central pillar, as if a great beast is stirring irritably in its sleep. The shimmering auras around the sleeping children flicker violently, like candles in a hurricane. "Without the words, the pact cannot be broken," she screams over the growing din. "But it cannot be renewed either. You have trapped us. You have trapped us all in this failing dream." I scramble on the floor, my hands searching frantically for my revolver. My fingers close around its cold, solid steel. I get to my feet, my body bruised and aching. The last page of the ritual burns away to a final glowing ember, and then the light dies. I am plunged back into total disorienting blackness. The shrieking stops. The trembling ceases. Silence, utter and complete. I wait, my heart hammering, my ears ringing, for long, agonizing minutes that stretch into an eternity. Nothing. I fumble for my matches, my fingers clumsy and shaking. I strike one. The tiny flame blossoms, a fragile defiance against the oppressive dark. The chamber is empty. Elara Veil is gone. The children are gone. The stone cots are empty. Even the central pillar seems smaller, less menacing. It is just a rock formation in a cave. I am alone. I don't know how long I stay there, shaking in the dark, the single match burning down to my fingertips. Eventually, the inspector in me, the survivor, takes over. I find my lantern, relight it, and begin the long, slow, soul-shakingly lonely climb back up the stone steps. When I emerge into the records room, blinking against the gray light of dawn filtering through the dusty windows, Sheriff Gable is there, slumped in a chair. He looks as if he has aged 10 years overnight. "Blackwood?" he asks, his voice a hoarse, cracked whisper. "What in God's name happened down there?" I look at him, at the familiar solid world of wood and dust and morning light. And I lie. It is the most important, most necessary lie of my life. "It was a tunnel," I say, my voice flat, devoid of all emotion. "A hidden one. It leads to the old mine shafts on the far side of the mountain. They must have been taken through there. They're long gone. No way to track them now. It's a weak story, full of holes a child could see through, but it's a story the world can understand. A story that doesn't involve dark pacts and eternal dreams, and women who live for centuries. It is a lie they can live with. The official report will state that the 53 children of the Veiled Graces Orphanage were the unfortunate victims of a sophisticated and unknown kidnapping ring, their trail lost in the vast, unforgiving wilderness of the Rocky Mountains. The case will remain open, a local tragedy, a dark footnote in the history of Auroreal. The town's quiet, unnatural prosperity will, I suspect, begin to fade over the coming years. The beast is no longer being fed. I leave Auroreal the next day, the scorched, leather-bound cover of Elara's diary a cold, heavy weight in my travel bag. I survived. I refused the pact. I saved the town from the waking wrath of the warden, and the children from the parasitic grip of the veiled lady. But it is not a victory. I didn't free them. By destroying the rituals, I have locked them away forever in their fraying dream paradise, their life force no longer being drained, but their souls forever untethered from the world. They are safe, but they are lost. And Beatrice, my sister, is their eternal silent guardian in that twilight realm. I ride away from the town on the morning train, not looking back. A cold, quiet peace settles over me, the peace of a tomb. I have the cover of her diary, the empty, powerless vessel of her monstrous power, and I have the horrifying knowledge that the pact was not ended. It was merely paused. The warden of the mountain is not dead, only sleeping, its dreams no longer fueled. And I can't help but wonder, as the jagged, oppressive peaks of Auroreal finally disappear behind me, What will happen in another 53 years, when the dream begins to fray again, and the mountain awakens with a hunger that has not been fed for a very, very long time?